Second chances and smarter choices. Today, Gane Jr., he talks to us about redemption, ethics, and money, and how to protect yourself in a world of viral hype and financial scams. Before we start, tap follow and subscribe and leave a 5-star review so more people can get practical wisdom that they can use. Now, welcome back to The Advisor with Stacey Chillemi, where insight becomes action. By the end of this episode, you'll know how to spot red flags, how to vet opportunities and advisors, and how to rebuild credibility, purpose, and a hard fall. After you had a hard fall, he's going to show you how to get up again. Now, Guy, welcome back to the show. You
Thank
have a
you.
podcast on our channel, and you have been working on some special things. I know you have a special course that you're doing.
Right.
For people who haven't seen you before or haven't seen you in a while, could you
hmm
say hello to everybody and tell everybody a little about yourself?
Hi. How is everybody doing today? A little bit about myself. My goodness, I can spend about 2 hours telling about myself. But yeah, my background, my career, I was a stockbroker for over 30 years, as well as a registered investment advisor. We had a little bit of a hiccup. It was more of a little bit of a hiccup in my office. We found out that a few people were misleading our investors, and when they got caught, they said that I told them to do it, which, of course, as you know, Stacey, I passed two polygraph tests and, vehemently denied that I had ever known anything about it. I know before the show, we were talking about, a few people had been incredulous, really, that I didn't hide any money before everything happened. And I said, well, why would I hide money? I didn't know what was going on. And I
Yeah.
guess if there's anything that proves innocence would be that. But in any event, the government came after me. I kept denying that I was involved. The employees, the three of them, I had multiple offices throughout the country, but three of my brokers had been involved in this, and they said that I told them to lie to investors and to mislead them, something I would never do. Again, pass these polygraph tests and attested to that. But despite that, the government decided to come after me, which, really was the right thing to do because I was the owner of the company. And as I've told other people, the captain of the ship is the one that is responsible, what the sailors do. And I was responsible. And even though I didn't know about it, I was still responsible. The thing that bothered me, Stacey, was the fact that the government came up with their own narrative and really made me look like, pretty bad. And as I've said to so many people over the years, that it's funny because when the government tells us things, most of us don't really believe it, or at least we half believe it, or whatever. But when the government accuses somebody of a crime, everybody believes it. And I ended up in any event taking a plea deal, which just killed me to do. But knowing if I would lose a trial, with the sentence would have been much, much harsher. And the judge threw the key away anyway, even on a plea deal, which I didn't know was going to happen. But in any event, I spent 9 years in prison for a crime I never committed. And I'm not saying that for anybody to feel bad for me. It's just that, there was life lessons there that I learned. And I think that, when I would talk to white collar guys there that had lost their positions, whether they were brokers or attorneys or doctors or accountants or whatever, professionals, what am I going to do when I get out? I don't know what I'm going to do. My life is over. And I was always the guy that really tried to encourage people. I don't know why. It's just been, part of my DNA, never to give up. And really mentored a lot of people while I was there and a lot of people since I've been out. I'm a life coach, certified life coach, as you know. And what I did is I've written four books, but my passion really for the last year has been learning more about artificial intelligence. And the more I learned about this, we live in a world that is just, I mean, it's just in hyperdrive. Month to month, it's almost like things are moving. And what I had noticed is that as I got more involved in learning about artificial intelligence, is how few people, whether they were 20 or 80, really knew about artificial intelligence and really how important it is to, number one, learn about it, but really to navigate it is the important thing. And as we talked before the show started, artificial intelligence for the average public has really only been available since 2023, so less than 2 years ago. And it's just, again, as I mentioned, in hyperdrive right now to be able to learn. But my point was, is as I was learning more about this and talking to people, especially older folks, I'm talking about people 50, 55 and above, with a very limited knowledge, if anything at all. I really thought, there's really nothing out there for them to learn. And what I decided to do was to put together a course. It became a labor of love. I mean, really, it became a labor of love. It took me 6 months, but I put together a course that spoke about how to navigate and what to do, what it really is about. It's a very easy course. It's designed for people 55 and above, although anybody certainly can take it. But
Mhm.
it really is designed to be a very, very basic introduction to what artificial intelligence is. And, Stacey, when I was talking to people about this, because I was really trying to vet, is this the thing that would even be, wanted out there? And, people said, well, I don't know anything about it. I mean, what do I do? Where do I go? And I said, well, you're already using it. You just don't know. Well, what do you mean? Well, if you have Siri or Alexa in your home, that's artificial intelligence.
Right.
If you go into your computer in the car and your navigation system, that's artificial intelligence. And it's over and over that we mentioned before, like your bank accounts. Artificial intelligence lets you know if there's fraud going on in your account. And
Right.
so many things that it's already part of our lives, but people don't know that. And they're going to know it today if they never knew it before, just by listening to what we're talking about. But the course really is one that's very elementary. It's very easy to understand. It's made up of 10 modules. Each module has 4 segments in it. And each segment is about 20 minutes. And I tell people that really don't take the course more than that. Do one segment at a time. Some segments are 23 minutes, some are 20, some are 18 or 19. I think there's one or two that might be like 25 minutes, but don't do more than one segment a day. And if you do that, within a couple of weeks, you'll have the basics and know what's going on. We have plans right now in the works to make this worldwide. And also, we're going to be coming with more advanced courses and for people that want to know more. And plus, a lot of seniors want to make money doing this, and people are doing it. I mean, I've got people right now that are making anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 a month to supplement their income, which is a considerable amount of money.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. Now, what did, what did that season teach you about ego and oversight and the blind spots that sink into a business and a life when you were going through everything? Because now you had your experience, before you had gone away and went through this whole trauma. And
Mhm,
then, and then you came out and now you're building this great career. You're a certified life coach. You created this great program.
mhm.
What did all this teach you about ego?
Ego is a great thing to have if it's checked, and if you don't get carried away with it. And let's face it, I mean, everybody, you and I, and everybody that's listening and watching today knows people that they might have friends or acquaintances or relatives that their egos are out of whack.
Yeah.
I really, for me, um, I had a very high degree of trust for people. And I don't want to get up on a soapbox here, but I'm going to segue if I could. You know, when you trust people, you cannot trust people blindly. I did. I mean, I was one of those guys that believed everybody. And I know this sound is kind of what I'm going to say is going to sound self-serving, and I apologize for that because that's not my intent. But I have found in my life that if you're a liar, you think everybody's a liar.
Mhm.
And if you're a cheater, you believe everybody's out to cheat you. If you're a thief, you think everybody's going to steal from you. And the reason, and I really had to think about this, well, why is that? Well, we judge everybody by ourselves. We like to believe that we don't, but we know who we are. Sometimes we
Right,
don't like to admit, some of the things that we are, but we know who we are. And
right.
we judge everybody by how we are. And I
Mhm.
have found that, if someone, and again, what I mentioned before about sounding self-serving, I apologize for that because I know it's going to sound that way. But I was the type of person that everybody could trust. That's why I did so very well in my business. I had thousands of clients all over the country and had been in business again a long, long time without any complaints, which was kind of unheard of in my business. But the thing
Yeah.
is that I trusted people in the way that people could trust me. And if
Right.
you own a business, if you have employees, and I've mentored businesses, I'm also a business consultant based on what I've been through. And what I've told people, the number one cautionary tale, if you will, if you have employees, be friendly, be nice to them, don't treat them like garbage, but don't become friends with them. And I became friends with my employees, some much closer than others. And the reason I say that, Stacey, is that for me, what I did is I looked at friends as opposed to an employee that I should have let go. I had a
Right.
couple of employees that I knew I should let go. I knew that, but I couldn't. They were friends, and one of them was very high up in my company, and his daughter had cerebral palsy, and
Mm.
that was their only child. And I knew I should have let him go. I knew it. He was not doing his job.
Right.
But I let my friendship override, common sense. So when I talk to businesses, and even here today, I would say if you own your own business or you have employees or you have a team, you've got to hold them accountable. Because at the end of the day, for me, I ended up becoming responsible for the things that these people, that particular person actually was, instrumental in some problems. You really you have to use common sense. It can't be just blindly trust everybody. But again, some of the things that what you had mentioned before that I had learned about ego is really for me, I had to learn to discern. And I know, you and I have talked before. I would hear these things, that still small voice that, people refer to. And,
Yeah.
I would hear, don't hire this one, don't hire that one, don't do it this way, do it that way. And I
Right.
didn't, I didn't listen. And I'm not blaming anybody. Again, it was my responsibility to know. Um, One of the things that really hurt me, when I had people that were writing letters to the judge, it hurt me, but it struck me right between the eyes because I remember I read this particular letter that this friend of mine had written to the judge. He was also an employee.
Yeah.
But he said, Guy was such a great guy that he allowed his employees to manage him instead of him managing them. And I thought, oh my God, oh man, that's terrible to read. But it was so true. So I look back on it now, it happened a long, long time ago. I've been out of prison a long time. But
Yeah.
but the thing is that I've never forgotten some of those things. I guess the
Right.
painful ones you never do forget.
No, you don't. It sticks with you. It's true. Now, when trust is broken, what is the first step toward making amends and moving forward?
I think that, people mistake forgiveness with, that they do it for the other person. I forgive you. It's like I always picture when people talk like that, where the king or the queen, takes the sword and puts it on the person's, shoulder. I forgive you. I anoint you, whatever. You don't forgive people for the other person. You
Right.
forgive people for yourself. Because
Yeah.
that other person that did the misdeed or hurt you in some way, but they've forgotten about you. I mean, they moved on with their lives a long time ago.
Hmm.
And but you keep dwelling on it. If you don't forgive a person, you keep dwelling on that. And I know that people mistake that, forgive and forget. I don't think you can forget. I mean, I don't think that's realistic. When you
Yeah.
forgive somebody, you don't dwell on it anymore. When
Right.
you harbor anger against someone, you think about it over and over. I'm going to get them. I'm going to fix them. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. First of all, you're taking literally days away from your lives, by
Yeah.
thinking that way because of the stress. Which of course today, as we know, stress plays an important part in all of our lives.
Mhm.
I'm not just talking about, getting upset about something, but that adrenal gland, releasing all of those, the cortisol and, that has a detrimental effect on our health. But the
Yeah.
thing is that when we forgive people, we do it for ourselves. And,
Right.
for me, I forgave everybody. I forgave everybody a long, long, long time ago. And I don't say that to, anybody to think I'm feeling good about myself. It's just, it was self-preservation. And I really didn't want to hold anything against anybody. It's just, it was done. It's in the past. I know this sounds corny maybe, but I felt bad for the people that did lie because they have to live with those lies, knowing that those lies put someone in prison for what they
Yeah.
did. That's got to be a horrible experience. I would think, maybe not, but I think it would be. I know I couldn't handle that, to know that my lies actually cost somebody a great deal of their lives. So,
Mhm. I agree. I agree. I had it, when we talk about forgiveness and we talk about, yes, it's definitely true. We
mhm,
have to learn to forgive the person, and they're not going to forgive. They're going to forget about it. They're going to, I forgive you, and it's, it's done. They forgot, they, gone on with their life and so forth.
mhm,
Now, to forgive somebody and to let go is a very hard concept.
mhm.
How were you able to let go? Because it's very hard to forgive. You have to look at it from a perspective, put yourself in that person's shoes and try to understand why they did what they did, and then realize that maybe it wasn't the right frame of mind. Maybe they grew up in a bad environment. Maybe maybe lots of things. Maybe they were
Mhm.
strapped for cash, whatever the case may be. But then how do you, once you've come to terms and you say, I forgive them for their actions, how do you let go? Because that's, I think, one of the biggest problems people face is letting go and then moving forward. That letting go part is a hard thing to do, letting go of the baggage.
Yeah, I think I can only speak from my experience, but for me, it was my faith in God.
Yeah.
In the Christian faith, which I am a Christian,
Hmm.
the Lord's Prayer, which a lot of your viewers and listeners know, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us.
Hmm.
And when you actually say that, what you're really saying is that, look, God, hey, forgive me in the same way that I forgive everybody else. If I'm mad at everybody else and hate everybody else and don't forgive anybody, I'm basically saying that, what, when it's time for judgment, do the same thing to me. I don't have time to harbor anger. Now, let me tell you, I'm not happy with these people. Don't get me wrong. I'm not, every once in a while when I do think about it, I think, how could somebody do that?
Yeah.
How could even the prosecutor who told me that she knew that I was innocent,
Yeah.
how can you do that? You know, the judge, I think about when he threw the key away. I think, yeah, I want to get mad. I'm human. I always tell people we're spiritual beings in a human body, and our human
Yeah.
body betrays us. It just does. But
Hmm.
I think it's a process to be able to do. And for me, it was my faith that really did it. And again,
Yeah.
I know that sounds hokey, that maybe he's just saying that. No, it's the way I live. Again, it's not that I don't get mad. It's not that I don't every once in a while think about how could they do that. But
Yeah.
again, I don't dwell on that. I just don't. That thought will come to me, and I'll just move on. And I think
Exactly.
I think for each one of us, Stacey, it's very different. I'd like to
Yeah.
say there's a pill that we could take and just forget all the hurts, but really it's the hurts that we learn from. I have a client right now, a business client that I really helped over the last couple of years, the last year, I should say, 18 months,
Yeah.
and he had a business partner. Excuse me, and because of my experiences. I spoke to this gentleman and told him, look, you better be really, really careful. I'm hearing some things from this guy that uh, I liked him, his partner, but I was hearing things and I warned him about this. And they broke up about 6 months ago now. And they broke up, he told me, he said, guy, if it weren't for you, he said, I can't thank you enough. I'm working, with him in his new company.
Yeah.
But the thing is that because of the actions that this guy, the partner, pulled, has
Yeah.
dragged him into some court litigations that are coming up. The other guy took off out of town, took money that he shouldn't have taken,
Hmm.
and but yet, It's because of the experiences. And I say this on my website, I'm really the guy that's been there and done that. And my
Right.
whole mission today is to take years off of people's learning curves, whether it's
Right.
talking about artificial intelligence and learning that, or, how to navigate life or how to navigate your business, how to run your business. I have been there. I mean, I had employees, I had offices, I, faced believing everybody and,
Yeah.
the trust factor. But those are the things that I can take, those lessons that I learned that I really wish I wouldn't have had to learn. But because of
Yeah.
the lessons that I went through, and I told her, actually, we spoke yesterday, and I told him, I said, I know right now is a very, very tough time for you. He's getting served papers and, getting sued because this other guy has pulled shenanigans, and they were still partners before they broke up when some of this stuff happened. I
Yeah.
said, I said, in every adversity, and I know this. It's not that I believe it. I know it. I lived it. In
Hmm.
every adversity is a lesson. And
Yeah.
every adversity, we tell people I'm going through this, but yeah, you're right. You're going through it. You're not staying there. You're going through it. So keep a level head. If, maybe one of two of your listeners are going through a little bit of a tough time right now for whatever reason, in whatever course. But really just understand that you have to keep a level head
Yeah.
and and just don't let the other guy. I know there used to be a saying years ago, don't let the other guy see you sweat. I think really it's important to just know that you know we're on a path that we chose.
Yeah.
And I think that if you keep your eye on the ball, if you keep your eye centered, that
Hmm.
there is a loving God, and He is there for you. I don't want to turn this into an evangelical, meeting right now, but but like I said, I can only tell you where I come from, and that's the position that I come from. So again, just really be very, very careful when you go through things, and try not to get yourself involved. But if you do, understand that there's lessons, and you will come out if you believe in yourself. You will come out on the other side. And I'm not bragging, but I am the person that can say that. I've done it.
Right. That's so true. And you talk about never quitting. Did you not what did not quitting actually look like on some of your hardest days?
Wow, that's a good question. There would be days that I would lay on my bunk and think, "What?" I mean, I would wake up in the morning and say, "Oh my God, I'm really here."
Yeah.
Um, for me, I put one foot in front of the other, and I still do that. There are lessons that I learned there, as I mentioned earlier in the show, that I apply to my life now.
Yeah.
I know the day that my son picked me up. I have three children, two boys and a girl, but one of my sons came to pick me up.
Yeah.
And he was, we were on the thruway coming back home, and he's in and weaving out, and he's getting mad at people. I said, please, Guy, his name is Guy as well. I said, Guy, just slow down. It's not that important. It's not I don't sweat the small stuff anymore. I don't. I'm not saying I don't get upset about things, but I don't get as upset as I used to be.
Right.
I have a very, very high patience level now. I don't suffer fools the way I used to. I adhere to the fact that that still small voice that I really now listen to all the time. Um, you know, th- th- I think that going through my experience gave me, like I said, a lot of patience because I
Yeah.
had to. I never gave up hope, though. I never gave up hope that I would get out early. I always felt that the truth would come out. And when I came back home and I would see some of the things that were online, I was like, oh my Lord. But, I had a reporter from one of the papers in Western New York approach me and want to interview me. And I said, nah, I really don't want it. He said, look, I looked into your case. I know exactly what happened to you. He said, you got railroaded. And that was not the word he used. And
Yeah.
he said, we need the public to know about this. And I said, the United States government, the Justice Department, has a very long reach and they have very long memories. And I said, I'm very, very concerned that if I start talking to the media, that there's going to be some vendettas or vengeance, there for me. But the thing is that I prayed about this, and again, I know that people may take that again as being hokey, that word. But I finally decided after a couple of weeks that I would talk with him, and he did a series of articles. And, those are the ones that are there. And, it was pretty obvious to the people that knew that, I was railroaded. I will use that word. But the thing is again, I'm not mad about that. I mean, I wish it wouldn't have happened. I'm grateful for it. I know that
Yeah.
sounds crazy, because it made me into the person I became now.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it was a very difficult thing to go through. It really was, and I felt really bad for my family. They were, my one son, my oldest guy, because my name was the same. It really adversely affected him. He's a movie actor, and it really he lost some jobs because of it. And my all three of my kids went through hell, frankly, because of it. I was married at the time. We ended up getting divorced, and when you get the key thrown away, I mean, and this is the problem I say to people when I speak to a group that when someone goes to prison, if they're married, the wife or the spouse, we'll put it that way. Most of the people in prison are men, but the spouse is either becomes celibate, they become unfaithful, or they get divorced. It's one of the three. And
Yeah.
it's very, very difficult. It's very difficult for people. Um, I think one of the hardest things with the family is that, if you're a United States serviceman and you're serving overseas, and your wife or your husband, whatever, needs to have something done at the house, neighbors will come over and help out.
Yeah.
Friends will come out. People are there for you.
Yeah.
But when you're the husband, or excuse me, the wife in my case, of a felon, there's nobody around. The kids, it was in my second marriage, but her children were much younger, and
Yeah.
11 and 13, and people didn't want to play with them, to keep them away. They're the ones that suffer.
Yeah.
But what amazed me, Stacey, is how many people I was in prison with that just were, they were looking forward to coming back. I mean, I, I would help with education, and I would tutor guys. And I remember one particular guy said to me, they used to call me Gino, but they said, Gino, I'm going to be back. It's not a big deal. I said, well, you want to spend the rest of your life in prison. This guy had been in and out for 25 years. And he
Yeah.
said, no, no, I'm going to be back. I'm going to be back in a couple of years. And I thought, well, how do you wrap your head around that? But I know I got off on a tangent from your question, but I really think helping other people is, having faith in God, but helping other people, for me, that's really helped me a lot.
Yeah.
They used to call me Saint Gino, the patron saint of lost causes when I was in prison. It was not an epitaph I wanted to identify with, but I knew how people felt. One of the things too that I do want to say, Stacey, is that when people would, especially guys coming in like that first night, um, I told people, I said, I said, you've been given a blessing that you don't realize. Oh, wait, well, yeah, what are you talking about? I said, now you know who your friends are, and now you know who loves you. Because I'll tell you, there's nothing that shakes the tree like that. And
Yeah.
every single one of them, every single one said, you're right. So, and I knew I was right. So,
Right. Yeah. That's tough. What personal practices like faith, fitness, journaling helped you turn pain into growth?
our experiences, I think, were really, what I had gone through. I had a chance to reflect on the way things were for me in my business and my life. The people that I was dealing with, the people that were part of my family. I had a
Yeah.
family member who had said, "I'll never forget this." Again, forgave him as well, but if forgiven was needed, I don't know if it was, but he got drunk at a family party, and he said to me, "Well, guy," he said, "we're sure going to miss you." I thought, "Oh, gee, thank you. I appreciate that. I think." But but the thing is that I really do think that growth is always there when you look for it.
Yeah.
But I've had people, when I've given talks, I tell people at the beginning, I have the antidote for happiness. I can absolutely guarantee you, before you leave here tonight, I would always say this to people, before you leave, I'm going to give you the antidote to how to be happy. I guarantee it, absolutely guarantee it. And what that is, some of them thought I was nuts, but I said, you want to be happy in your life? Do something nice for someone. I promise you. I promise you, whether it's buying a cup of coffee or whatever the case is, buying
Yeah.
if you're in line at the coffee line, Starbucks or whatever, buy the coffee for the person that's behind you. It'll give you such a warm feeling. I mean, unless you're without a heart or soul, but
Yeah,
barring that, I mean, it's going to give you a nice feeling. You're going to be happy, and it'll probably set the tone for the rest of the day.
I love that. That's so true. That's so true. I think I say, just, giving someone a compliment, buying them a cup of coffee,
Right,
many people say, oh, I would just, throw a couple of dollars down and, it would pay for the person behind me and I just would walk away and that person would get a free cup of coffee, and, if you're in a grocery store, wow, that's a pretty blouse, and
right.
people light up because, that's what brings joy and happiness to
Yeah.
people.
Last week I was at a grocery store, and as I was walking through the parking lot, there was a young girl who worked, I think worked in the store. I know she did. And there was an older lady, she's probably in her 80s, and this young girl, helped the lady out to the parking lot and put her stuff away. And really, she was very, very caring. And when she was done, she was kind of walking in front of me, and I said to her, I said, I said, you did a really, really nice thing. Well, it's okay. I said, no. I said, you really did a nice thing today. I said, you should really, really be proud of yourself. And as I walked away and she walked away, I thought, you know what? I really hope that she took that to heart because I really meant that. The other day, actually, the same day, I know a lot of us don't carry cash anymore, but every once in a while I do. And
Mhm.
when I was putting things back in the car, I thought, when I got home, I didn't have that money in my pocket. And I thought, oh man, it was like 40 some dollars. Not a lot of money, but it was enough.
Oh, yeah.
So I said, I can't believe I got mad. I thought, I
Yeah.
can't believe I did that. I must have, when I pulled my keys out of my pocket, you know, I,
Right.
but I remember thinking, as I finally started calming down after a minute, I thought, you know what? Maybe somebody needed that money more than me. Maybe that
Right.
was God's way to give. And it really, honestly, I really felt good about it at that point. I didn't want to miss the money, but I thought, you know what? That's probably I know that would happen. And I felt so good about that. And then when I went into my room, I didn't
Yeah.
realize when I got back to the house, I put the receipt in my pocket. But
Yeah.
when I got back to the house, I took the receipt out and threw it down on my desk. And when I went back there a little bit later, there was the money as well. And even
Wow.
though I say, that I was happy if somebody would have gotten it, I
Yeah.
know this sounds self-serving, but I felt good because it wasn't like I'm grumping and going, I can't believe I felt good about myself. But take that for
Yeah.
whatever that's worth. But I thought,
No, I hear you.
I had a good feeling. I was the one with the good feeling because I thought, hey, I was wishing something good on somebody. But
Yeah.
anyway, so
That's so true. I was thinking, you've heard so much, being in prison, the stories, things that happen,
Mhm.
seeing what other people did. I think it would be so important for people to understand some of the red flags because nowadays you go on the internet, you hear these terrible stories. People get scammed left and right. They love to attack the elderly people,
Oh
especially.
yeah, yeah.
And so for everyday investors, like what are the five red flags that should stop them from wiring a single dollar? Because you hear that all the time. People wire money, and all of a sudden, there was nothing, and they didn't get what they were promised. Then they try to get the money back,
Mm,
and it's gone.
yeah,
And
yeah,
people have lost tens of thousands of dollars, and
yeah.
things like that.
One thing along with that, a couple of years ago, I had a notice from PayPal, and my email is gainwisdom@gmail.com. And I had gotten this notice from PayPal that they wanted to know if it was okay to send, that they had sent money like $550 and out of my account, and just letting me know. And I got, oh my, what's going on here?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
what happened is when PayPal had addressed this email to me, it was dear gainwisdom@gmail.com. So I didn't think anything of it. Well, I made a phone call, where it said that you make the phone call. And the more I started hearing them, I thought, you know what? And then the guy said to me, well, what other bank accounts do you have? And at that point, I knew, well, I called PayPal, and PayPal told me, and I hope that people will really listen to this. If you get one of those scam notices, it's not going to say, dear your whatever your email is. It's going to
Right.
say, dear Miss Chillemi, dear Mr. Gane. I mean, it's going to say your name. And
Yeah.
I think that's really a big red flag for people, especially because you get something like that, especially if you're not really a person that's a business person per se, and you
Yeah.
think, oh my God, what are they doing to my account? I got a call and, you give them a bank account. Somebody has something that, I don't know if you remember, Stacey, about 30 years ago, there was that, what they used to call the Nigerian, what was it called? Nigerian money scam or something. I forgot
Yeah.
exactly but what was happening is they were calling people, telling people, we need your account number because this person that died left you money, and we just need your bank account. We'll deposit the money there. And that was going around for a while. I think it took a few years for people to, really smarten up with that. But there's always scammers out there that are always looking to pull something. And again, just if your gut, and again, I can't stress this enough, if your gut tells you, go with what that gut feeling is, that still small voice that, again, I always listen to, because when that happens, like when I talked to that person that whatever scam it was with this PayPal thing, well, what other bank account? And that was pretty blatant at that point. I knew what was going on. But
Yeah.
I think it's really important to discern. And if you have a problem, hey, ask one of your family members. If you're an older person and you don't understand, especially widows. I used to see that happen a lot with widows. That
Yeah.
they trust people and they don't want to bother their children, or they don't want to look stupid to their kids, whatever. That's it's better to be safe than sorry. And unfortunately, that's people always out there, looking to make a quick buck on somebody's naivety, we'll put it that way.
100%. Now, if a friend pitches a guaranteed 12 to 15% private note or real estate play, what questions do you ask before you say yes?
Oh, well, right now, I mean, if you've got somebody that's quoting you 12 or 15%, that's pretty high. I mean, the bank rates right now for a traditional mortgage is about 6.5%, give or take. And maybe if you're getting a bank loan, it's usually prime plus one, so you're looking somewhere between 8 and 9%.
Hmm.
Anything above that is you got to look on suspicious. I would ask for certainly documentation. Um, Bernie Madoff years ago, excuse me, a little bit of history there, because my firm was so big. We had a lot of clients. We had a lot of pension plans that were clients of ours. And they used to say, if you can you get me into Madoff funds? I really want Madoff funds, but we can't get in there. And if you could do it, I remember one particular fund was in mid-state New York. I've got $35 million. I got to get that. I've got to do something. What can you do? Can you? So we didn't know. We actually called Madoff. But they were quote unquote closed. And that was part of the scam, to make people want it all that much more. And I really thought that I had an angel on my shoulder, because had we done anything with Bernie Madoff's funds, I would have
Yeah.
been so tied into that, that I was his business partner. I mean, I could just imagine what would have been
Right.
said. But, the
Yeah.
thing is, when, that old saying, when it's too good to be true,
Hmm.
it really is. When it's too
Yeah.
good to be true, it generally is. I mean, every once in a while you find something that, hey, it's a pot of gold that I had no idea about, and just be
Yeah.
discerning about it, and really try to find out a little bit more, a lot more actually, not a little bit. But when people start offering you this and that, and they can do this and they can do that, I mean, real estate takes a long time. One of the gentlemen that businesses, I should say, that I've worked with, were raising money for real estate. And what I told them to do, and I cautioned them about doing this, is to raise money as basically just, for people that they may want to invest. And
Yeah.
this is what's going to be available. But right now, we're just taking indications of interest, is what I told them to do. And what
Right.
that meant is they were letting the investors know, these were accredited investors, but they were letting the investors know that they had this going, and as they're working on it, if we need the money, we'll let you know. But we
Right.
just are letting people know right now that we have this project going, And right now, we're just taking indications of interest. If this is of interest to you, we can talk with you later if we decide to go that route. And that would be the way to go. But you're not going to be offering them 12 or 15% or anything like that. That just is unreasonable. You can't get that kind of return right now.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And for retirees and caregivers, what's a simple guardrail that protects seniors from financial exploitation?
Really know the broker. I mean, if you're dealing with a broker, check online and see, what type of person that they are. The government, FINRA, FINRA, has a website. FINRA is the overseer of stockbrokers, and you can contact them. Actually, you can go online. You don't need to talk to anybody if you don't want, but you can go online and get the report on that broker. If that broker has a number of complaints, that is definitely a red flag. And that's something that people should really adhere to. And, it was funny. Years ago, I had a client of mine that had been a client for quite a while. But they had also been dealing with another broker. And I was a person that never disparaged anybody. And
Yeah,
the other broker, however, didn't play by those rules.
right.
And he started making some pretty bad remarks about me. This was back in the early 90s. And I remember I thought, well, I don't even know who this guy is. So
Yeah,
I looked him up, and it turned out that this guy he was a rascal. He had all these complaints and such. So I called him up. I'll never forget this. I called him up and I said, I don't know why you're saying this stuff. I said, we've never met. Well, you're
yeah,
this, you're that. And I said, well, you don't even know me. I said, first of all, you're wrong. I said, but I said, what do you think Bill would think if I told him about all of the complaints that you have? And you just recently paid out $40,000 in fines. He hung up on me. And I thought, I laughed because, usually I have found the people that swing the hardest or throw the most stones, and this could be whatever way you want to look at this, the
yeah,
people that are always disparaging other people really are the ones that are making up for something. We'll put it that way. I
yeah.
won't dwell on this, but like I said, we all know people like that. They're always casting stones, but usually they're the ones that have something to hide. That's what I
Exactly.
found.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Now, if someone already sent money out and now feels uneasy, what should they do in the next 24 to 72 hours?
Well, it depends on what when you say send the money out into an investment
Yeah.
or to give to someone, like a private
Invest.
loan or.
So, like for an investment, if they sent out money for an investment or even a private loan, like anything that you have an acknowledgement on that you could share with people to help them.
Yeah, if it's a private loan, you should be able to get that money back if you're having second thoughts. I'm going to say this too, Stacy. That person probably had second thoughts even before they gave the money away.
Probably.
But if it's an investment, when I was in the business, you had 72 hours to change your mind. And,
Okay.
I would definitely, if you're dealing with a broker or financial person of some sort, call them up and tell them, look, I'm not really comfortable with this. I don't want to
Yeah.
do this. One of the things that my hallmark dealing with people were I rarely did business the first time. I would tell them what the investment was and how it worked and so on and so forth. And I wanted the person to want to do this. So I wasn't one of these guys that, we've got to do this today and we're going to miss out if we don't.
Yeah.
My feeling was I would rather have the person sleep on it, think about it. If they're uncomfortable, and I would say this to people, look, if you want to do something, I'll give you a call next week. In the meantime, give me a call if you have any questions. If you decide you want to do something, I'll see you next Thursday. And,
Right.
we'll take care of it then because it gave them a chance to really digest it. But if you get somebody that really is pressuring you, I know I'm giving you all these war stories here today, but I had a client of mine who had been a client for many, many years. And he was an older gentleman. This was back in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
And we had a great relationship, I thought. Well, one day I noticed that the account had gotten transferred. And I wasn't mad about it. I was really surprised because it wasn't only him. I had his whole family's accounts, his brother, his sister's account,
Hmm.
his nephews and nieces. So it was like a family account type of thing.
Yeah.
I called him up and I said, look, I'm not calling you about any reason like I'm mad, but did I do something or not do something that I should have? I said, only because I want to not do this again with someone. And I'll
Right.
never forget, he said to me, Mr. Gane, he said, this guy, this broker came to my home and he badgered me and he wouldn't leave me alone. And he finally made me sign this thing. It was the only way I could get rid of him. And I said, well, that's illegal. I said, that's illegal. We
Yeah.
got everything back. But if people do that to you as an investor,
Yeah.
that's against the law. But I told him, I said, it's too bad you didn't know. I mean, you should have called 911. But people get caught. The people that pull that kind of garbage, they're going to get caught in any event. So, you know,
100%. Yeah. Very true.
excuse me.
So, what does credible restitution look like in a real life beyond apologies?
When you say, are you talking money wise, like a restitution back to an investor, or are you talking about, somebody who is really contrite and goes back to the person that they hurt? What do you
When
mean?
someone goes back to the person they hurt,
What does that look like, or what should it look like?
what does that look like? What it should look like?
I think, the eyes are the doorway to the soul.
Hmm.
And there is not a woman alive. I wish men were like this. And I wish I would have been like this. There is not a woman alive that doesn't see through people. I mean, maybe once in a while you find a woman that's clueless, but not very
Yeah, yeah.
often. Women
Hmm.
have an innate sense of they can spot the BS. They have a BS meter.
Yeah,
And if somebody comes in and says to you, I'm really, really sorry for whatever it is that they did
right.
or injured you in some way, you can tell if it's sincere. You just
Yeah,
can't. I mean, men can really tell too. There's
right.
body language that's involved. There's the facial expressions, but the eyes never lie. The eyes never lie.
They
And
don't.
I think that, when people really are contrite. You can tell.
Yeah.
I said one time to somebody, they said, "Well, why do you think that women?" There was another guy. Why do you think that women can tell? And I've always I pondered that. If that I love that word ponder. I pondered that. Why are women? This is my own half-assed theory. Men are considered defenders. Men are the guys that they're going to fight for their families and so on. But the last line of defense, why women, I think, are stronger than men. Women
Mhm.
are the last lines of defense before their children. The men may
Yeah,
be gone, the men may have gotten killed. I'm talking about cavemen type of stuff, but it all the way until today. But women, by their very nature, have to be strong because they truly are the ones that are the last defender of their child. And whether
yeah,
it's a child or a home or the family per se, or whatever the case is, I think God gave women that ability to see through BS. And
right.
again, personally, I don't know a woman that has never been able to spot a step. It's funny because the girl that I ended up marrying, in my second marriage, even my first marriage, they could spot a stiff a mile away. And I
Yeah.
remember, my wife telling me, I'm not so sure about this guy. You're crazy. I actually was offended that, why are you saying this? I like this person. But she was right. Now, one of my sons actually is like this, my middle son. He has a BS meter that's phenomenal. And my father was like that too. My dad was the type of person that could discern. And I've always said that, my oldest son is a lot like me. He trusts everybody, believed everybody, and so on. But my second son was more like my dad. It really, he was a very, very wise person. And
Right.
I think that, when it comes to, trying to make contrition to someone, I
Yeah.
really think at the end of the day, Stacey, it's how the person presents that to you. If they
Yeah.
really are sincere, you're gonna know. And
Right.
yes, a lot of people are gonna say, yeah, he's just saying that, or she's just saying that, but innately, you may not want to not be mad. You
Right.
might want to continue to be mad, and
Yeah.
there's nothing the matter with that. But you got to let it go, because
Exactly.
if the person actually came to you and asked for your forgiveness,
Hmm.
that says a lot, I think.
Yeah. I agree with you. I agree with you. When you were mentoring your younger self, what rules of risk would you require?
When I was mentoring my younger self,
Yeah.
that's a good question. Um, I have thought about that. I really have. I've thought about that a lot. What would I tell my younger self?
Hmm.
One of the laments as you get older, and I know we've all heard this, is, oh, if I were young, if I was only 20 years long, if I knew then what I know today. Believe
Yeah.
me, I'm the poster child for that one. I really am. you know, but and I say that's old fart stuff, when you start saying that kind of stuff. But I think that if I were, and I have thought about this, what would I tell my younger self? It was,
Right.
to go with your gut feelings, to go with that still small voice. Have
Yeah.
a deeper faith in God. I would tell my younger self, have a deeper faith in God, because I think that a lot of people, um, they have this belief that there's something out there.
Yeah.
There's a higher power, and whether you know him as God or Allah or Muhammad or not Muhammad, excuse me, Krishna, whatever.
Hmm.
I think that there's uh, an innateness in us that we
Yeah.
want to have someone that is higher than us, someone that
Yeah.
we could lean to. It's like, there's an old saying, there's no atheists in foxholes. And,
Yeah.
I've had people that I know that are atheists or agnostic, meaning, of course, they're open-minded, but they don't
Yeah.
believe one way or the other. As I say, and I wrote this in one of my books, is that everybody wants to go to heaven when they die, but nobody wants to die to go there. And
Hmm.
the thing is that at the end of the day, I had a good friend of mine, actually, he just lost his son recently,
Hmm.
and he's agnostic. And I don't know if I'm a piano player, and I've been playing the piano since I was a little kid. But I happened to put on my Facebook page this particular song, "Just a Closer Walk with Thee," and
Yeah.
I had recorded that a couple of years ago. So for whatever reason, just put it there. And he came to me one day. I'll never forget this. And he said, "Guy, do you really believe that?"
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah." I said, I said, "You may not believe in God, but God believes in you." So
Yeah.
he's there, and his son was sick at the time and did pass a few months ago. But the thing is that we want to know that there's something there,
Yeah.
Stacey. We want to know that this is not all it is. And I know some
Right.
people really believe that. Well, this is only one life, but I don't believe that. Energy doesn't die. And I
Right.
know we'll drift off if I talk about this. We're going to drift into another subject. But, when we look at the seasons right now, we're in the fall. The
Yeah.
leaves are falling off the trees. Things the cornfields are empty now. But, there's always next year. And I think that we have this cycle of life that we all are familiar with that we don't pay much attention to because life gets in the way. But there's a
Yeah.
cycle. Nothing really dies. Energy never, we know that scientifically, that energy
Mhm.
never dies. And at the end
Right.
of the day, that's all we really are.
Yeah.
Actually, when you look at who we are, whether we're sitting on a chair or a human being or whatever the case is, we're all these
Yeah.
particles moving very, very quickly that coalesce into whatever it is that it's coalesced into, whether it's a
Yeah.
body or whether it's a desk or whatever. I'm not trying to compare that your body is like your desk, but what I'm saying is that particles are what are made up in the universe,
Yeah.
and that's proven. And quantum physics now is really coming to its forefront. We have artificial intelligence, but quantum physics is right there with it. And I
Hmm.
think the more that we understand how the universe works, the more we understand quantum physics, how that works.
Yeah.
People, in one of my books, I spoke about the little brain in the heart, and people
Yeah.
don't realize, when you contemplate something, when you think about something, you'll say, well, especially people that want to manifest into their lives something that, you think, well, I keep thinking about all of these good thoughts and, something good will happen. Well, yeah, it may, but you've got to believe not only in your mind, but
Yes.
Stacey, let me ask you a question. Point to yourself right now. Just point to yourself. Where did you point?
It's my throat.
But to your chest. You didn't point up here. You pointed to your
No, I
chest.
usually would be to the throat or the chest. Usually the chest is where I
And the
point
reason
to.
is because when we believe who we are, This is who we believe we are, is our hearts. You pointed
Yeah.
to your throat, but you didn't point up here. You pointed to that area where your heart is in. And that's where really there's actually 30,000 cells there that are considered part of the brain. And that's
Yes.
why, when you get a feeling that I don't know, maybe I shouldn't do this, that's coming from here. It's not coming from there. But
Yeah.
again, that's where God speaks to us is through our soul. And,
Yeah.
again, I've told people many, many times that, when people say, I don't know if I should do this, or when you have to talk yourself into doing something, this is
Right.
very important. When you have to talk yourself into doing something, that's the Holy Spirit or that still small voice, whatever you want to call it, telling you not to do it. When you
Yeah.
have to talk yourself into not doing something,
Hmm.
that's the Holy Spirit or God telling you, your soul telling you to go ahead and do it. Because,
Yeah.
the thing is that we never really know. We're more used to, gee, I don't know if I should do this or not. And that's a question that comes up in all of our minds most every day. It might be
Yeah.
something small, it might be something big. But when
Right.
your heart, excuse me, when your soul and your mind are in opposition,
Yeah.
that's telling you right there what you should do.
Exactly. Exactly. Your intuition, your heart, and your brain are all made of the same composition. And
Right.
your gut and your heart send messages to your brain, and your brain only uses it's 10%. We only use our
Right.
brain. And
Right.
it's all usually realistic decisions that we use our brain for. But
Mhm.
everything else, it comes from the heart and comes from the gut.
That's right. That's right. And I think that we don't give enough credit to that. Unfortunately, I just don't really think that we do.
Yeah.
A lot of us, especially guys, well, that they never admit that they're sick or they're gonna, the best one is of course it doesn't happen much anymore. But years ago, before GPS, if a husband and wife were in the car, the wife said, "Well, you should go this way." No, I'm going to go that way, and then he'd end up, 20 miles out of the way. The reason I
Yeah.
could say that happened to me a number of times. But the thing is that I just really believe that again, you have to be open-minded to know that there's more to life and there's more that's going on in our lives than we can possibly imagine. And we're
Yeah.
never alone. We are never alone. Even when you're in a room alone, you are never alone. That I know
That is,
for a fact.
yes, 100%. Now, you coach and speak today. How do you keep your own checks and balances in place so that you can never drift?
I think it's important to let people know who you are. And for me, look, I said if I was younger, I would run for office, and I mean that. I really would, because what could possibly come out that hasn't come out about me already? So I don't have any skeletons left in the closet. They're all
Yeah.
they're all out there. Some I wish had never happened, but I've said to people in the past, going to prison um, was a wake up call. It was really like an education. Really not like an education. It was an education. And I've said to people, I wish this education would have happened to me much younger. But it's like, not that I wanted to go to prison at all, or especially when I was younger,
Oh,
but
yeah.
but the
Yeah.
thing is that it's that question, what comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Mhm.
So had I not gone through this experience, I wouldn't have the wisdom that I have right now.
Yeah.
And it's funny because my email address, as I mentioned before, is gainwisdom@gmail.com. But the funny thing is that before all of this happened, my email address was capitalgain29@aol.com. Now,
Right.
Capital Gain, of course, being in the brokerage business, it lent itself to that. And
Yeah.
my last name is actually my family name is Iovanishi. I know we've talked about that before. I'm actually Italian, but how they changed the name, I hear it was done at Ellis Island, but whatever. His name is Gain. My mom was actually born in Italy, and my dad when they came here. But in any event, the thing is that when I was thinking before I left prison, I'm going to need a new email address. I can't use Capital Gain anymore. And I kept thinking, what should I, what kind of, what am I going to use? What am I going to use? And then all of a sudden, and then really, I remember when it happened, this name came to me, Wisdom, Gain Wisdom. I
Yeah.
thought that's pretty cool,
Yeah.
And spelling my name Gane, it wasn't going to affect somebody who had Gain.
Yeah.
So, for me, I think that, when you look at the book of Proverbs, for instance, If anybody's into Proverbs or knows anything about Proverbs, those 31 chapters are really about wisdom.
Yeah.
And for me, I kind of thought that, you know, there's a part of the scripture in one of the Proverbs that says, wisdom is the principal thing, but in all you're getting, get
Yeah.
wisdom, wisdom and understanding. And I think that as you go through life, you become wiser and wiser. When we're young, we think we know everything. When you're 15 years old,
Yeah.
my God, you can't tell them anything. 14,
Yeah.
15, 16 years old, because we know everything. We're risk takers.
Right.
But the older that you get, of course, at that point, you think your parents don't know anything.
Yeah.
And but the older that you get, the wiser your parents were. My mom and dad have been gone a long, long time. And I remember, for such a long time afterwards, I'd say, I got to go talk to my dad. And I realized he was gone. Or I really want to tell my mom this, and I realized that she was gone. But I realized along with that how smart that they had become. Even though they were gone, they had become geniuses by that point. And some of the things they used to tell me, I'd roll my eyes and say, "Yeah, okay." But
Yeah.
I think with age comes wisdom if you pay attention to it. So
100%. Oh, I agree totally. Now, how do faith and services shape your definition of success now?
how my faith, uh,
Hmm.
okay. Yeah, I like I said, I listen to that still small voice. And we equate sometimes faith with like religion.
Yeah.
And that I'm of the Catholic faith, or I'm of the Protestant faith, or I'm of such a Jewish faith, whatever. It's kind of a misused word, faith is,
Yeah.
because faith, in the Bible, Paul says that faith is knowing or seeing something that's unseen. And
Yeah.
I really think that right now, for me, I have a great deal of faith in my own experiences that I
Yeah.
can reflect back to. But I have faith in the things that I do. And when people ask me, well, how should I pray? Or, we all know the stories that people get down on their hands and knees and, when things are really desperate,
Yeah.
I'm pleading and, oh my God, oh, please, God, I need the money to pay my mortgage or whatever the case may be.
Hmm.
When we do that, we've already believed that we're not going to get it. And
Yeah.
faith is knowing that you're going to get something or you're going to achieve something.
Right.
And it's not easy to do. It's a trained habit to be able to have that kind of faith. I think
Yeah.
that's important too, because when we pray or when we contemplate something, I
Hmm.
think it's really important to see that objective already being done. That's not easy to do. You can
Right.
tell somebody, well, you can manifest whatever you want, and you really can, but you got
Hmm.
to believe that you can do that. And it's not only belief, it's knowing that you can do it. I tell people when you equate faith, it's like going to a restaurant. If you order a steak, you have faith that it's going to get done. You're going to have a steak. You
Yeah.
know it. It's not like, gee, I really hope that they get it for me, and I hope that they have it. And you don't do that. But the
Right.
thing is that it's that kind of faith, knowing that you're going to achieve something, and
Yeah.
it's knowing that it's the right thing. Because
Right.
and I know we've talked about this in the past when we've done some of our other talks, that when people ask for something,
Hmm.
God, in my experiences, and I have to qualify by saying that,
Yeah.
you know, God either wills it or he allows it.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of rotten things that happen to us as human beings. Let's be honest. We lose a child, I think is the most horrible thing that can happen in our lives.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
the thing is that you say, well, God, how does God allow that?
Yeah.
We have to have faith that that higher power. And I know
Yeah.
that's easy to say, and it certainly would not be easy for me by any stretch or my grandchildren. But the
Right.
thing is that, God either wills it or he allows it. And one thing that I learned in prison and through not only in prison, but through all of the adversity that I had to go through was that I try to pray to the point where I get a good feeling about something, that what I'm doing is what's God's will. Because I
Yes.
learned, this is my experience, that it's a whole lot better to be living in God's will than it is in my own, because he's a
Yeah.
lot smarter than I am. I mean, he
Right.
created the universe, so I think that he's a little bit smarter than I am. And I really, I mean, I say that, kiddingly, but it really is true that I think
Yeah.
you have to have that faith that something is going to come out of this that's going to be good, that God knows what's best. And this happens with couples when they get married or before they get married. The girl thinks, I don't know. Guys will usually say, well, and girls too, I know. Well, I'll change him. He'll change after we're married. She'll change after we're married. Yeah, it's nice to have faith that they will, but practicality wise, you have to be practical as well. We
Yeah.
live in a broken world. We live in a world of physicality, and we
Yeah.
have to navigate that the best way that we can. And we don't
Yeah.
have crystal balls. We don't have, I know people go to psychics and such like that, and whether they're accurate or not. But the thing is, at the end of the day, that something has made the world go around, and I like
Yes.
to believe that I can put my faith in God that to do His will in my life, and
Right.
that really is one of the things that I pray all the time. The people ask me in my book, I wrote about Mount Athos. I don't know if you and I spoke about that before, but Mount
Yeah.
Athos is a peninsula in Greece. And Mount Athos is where there's about 20 different Greek Orthodox monasteries there. And there was a wonderful program years ago, back in 2011, actually, on Easter Sunday, that the program 60 Minutes did on Mount Athos. It's available on YouTube, and anybody that's listening, if you're into this at all, I
Yeah.
strongly, strongly would encourage you to listen to this on YouTube. Go to 60 Minutes and just put out Mount Athos, and it'll come up. And there was a Greek Orthodox priest that was living there that was actually from Boston, Massachusetts. And Robert Simon, or Bob Simon, was a journalist at the time. He's passed away since. But
Yeah.
this particular priest was sitting there explaining things about the way they do things.
Yeah.
And he said, I pray all the time. In the Bible in Thessalonians, uh, uh, Paul wrote to pray unceasingly. And that sounds good, but it doesn't sound practical.
Yeah.
Anyway, this Bob Simon was asking the priest, well, how do you pray? He said, when do you have time to pray? He said, I pray all the time. And I remember Simon said to him, oh, are you praying now? And I'll never
Yeah.
forget the words that this priest said. He said, what makes you think I'm not? And when I heard that, I thought, that doesn't sound practical.
Right.
But as we're talking right now, I'm praying. And I know that sounds crazy, but
No, it does.
there's a connection that I feel. And I don't want to turn this into some religious revival like I mentioned earlier, but there's a connection that I feel that because of my experiences, and because of especially my experiences in prison, that that really has stayed with me. And I know I mentioned that I have some things that have stayed with me, and that's one of them. And I always feel that God's around me. And I don't want to sound like, oh, everything is fine and I'm always happy it's not
Yeah.
practical. I'm not. None of us are. But
Right.
I have a feeling that I know that the right thing will happen because I
Right.
place my faith in the right thing that will happen in God's will. And again, you can't compress the lessons that we learn in life over an hour or
Yeah.
over a day. I mean, it's a lifelong thing. But I
Yeah.
really do believe that when you place your faith in things happening for the right reason and good things happening in God, you will navigate life much, much better. Had I, again, as I said before, had I listened to that still small voice, some of the folks that got me in trouble,
Yeah.
and again, I don't mean I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not. But
Right.
those folks that caused trouble, we'll put it that way,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have hired because I heard that voice, and I hired them anyway because I knew better because I
Yeah.
didn't know better.
That's
So,
true. It happens to all of us, all of us. Now, what's your message to someone listening who feels ashamed of failure and thinks that it's over?
oh my goodness, it's never over. It's never over. I remember Richard Nixon, of course, who has been vilified so many times over the years, but he had a great quote: "Failure is never failure until you quit." And that's so true. When you quit, it's done. You're a failure. Just have to pick yourself up again. Remember who's saying this to you. You have to
Yeah.
pick yourself up and just keep going. And it's very difficult. I mean, look, when I got in trouble, I had been very, very respected, in my field, and not only with other brokers throughout other countries or
Yeah.
companies, but in my community as well. I was on boards of directors. I was president of a board. I was on a hospital board. I had all of these things that, were prestigious for that word. When everything happened with me, I was literally, and I don't mean figuratively, I was
Yeah.
literally spit at. And I really had to get myself to the point where I had to get away from that.
Yeah.
And I had to forgive myself. I think that's the most important thing, is to forgive yourself. And that's not easy to do.
Right.
And to answer your question, I think that's the number one thing that you need to do, is realize that we're human, we make mistakes, but
Mm-hmm.
understand, as I said earlier, that every mistake, every screw up that we make is a lesson to be learned. And you can become much stronger with that. And,
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I came home and I was still kind of, moping around, and, you know, technology, I mean, had advanced so far over the years that I was completely lost. But
Yeah.
somebody had said to me, Guy, you went through hell and you
Yeah.
got through it. What worse could you go through personally?
Right.
And I always
Right.
said that going to prison, the worst thing that could happen is a loved one die. That's the worst. I really
Yeah.
believe the second worst is to go to prison and
Right.
have your good name ripped apart. And I always said to people, Stacey, that it would be easier, it would have been easier. And I even thought about this when I was inside. It would have been
Yeah.
much easier to do the time had I really been guilty. Because I could have said, you dumb jerk,
Mm-hmm.
you knew better.
Right.
And at least I could have said that to myself, but I kept saying to myself, "There's a reason for this. There's a reason for. I'm going to put this to good use," and I
Yes.
have. And I'm not bragging. I have. I've helped other people. I've helped businesses. I've helped just average folks, to navigate. And again, I always say, remember who's saying this.
Yeah.
I don't share what I'm going to share with you much, but I'm going to say this. When I was in prison, when my wife broke up with me, I wanted to commit suicide. Matter of fact, I tried. I did. I tried. I couldn't take anymore. You know, I had had a heart attack a few months after the government came into my office back then, and I actually died. And they brought me back with the paddles, and that's a whole nother story. But you know, when I finally that first night in prison, I don't care how many tough guys that went to prison, that first night is hell. And I laid there. I remember it was 11:30 at night, and I put my shirt over my face, and I was crying and, trying to be very quiet because I didn't want all the other guys hearing me. And I swore at God. I called God every filthy name you could possibly think of. How I didn't get struck down that night, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I was dead. You had me. You know the truth, no matter what anybody else believes. You know what. I went through all of that.
Yeah.
And a year and a half later, then my wife broke up with me. And I remember saying, Lord, what are you going to take my kids next? Is that the next test? You're just going to take them from me?
Right.
And I did. I tried to commit suicide, and it was a scarf, and it broke. The scarf broke. I'm not saying this to anybody feel bad about this, but when I came home, um, and that was from that point on, things I had a man up, as the word goes. But when I
Yeah.
came home, I had a pastor reach out to me. He said, Guy, he said, I've got a girl that really is contemplating suicide. She's been talking about this. She's in bad shape. Would you mind talking to her? And I said, yeah, no, I'll speak with her. And we did. We spoke a couple of times. And I told her, I said, I said, only somebody who has been through what you've gone through knows how
Yeah.
you feel. I
Right.
said, I know how bad it hurts right
Yeah.
now. I know how bad it hurts.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm not saying I talked her down because I don't know that I did. But,
Right.
when we were finally done, we had spoken a couple of times. Before we hung up, it was actually the last time I spoke with her.
Yeah.
She said, Guy, she said, I really believe you went to prison to help people like me. And I never forgot that. I thought, wow, and I didn't take like pride. It was just like that hit me. I thought, I never really had thought about that. But
Right.
when people say, well, Guy, you don't understand. Guy does understand because I've
Yeah.
been there and done that. I really, really have. And again, I don't say all of these things to make me seem like some guy that, oh, he's doing great. And it's a challenge. I mean, you got to remember, I mean, I've got that big F that follows my name as a felon. I had my gun rights taken from me. I was a hunter. I loved hunting. I can't do that anymore. All of these things that I could do before, but the biggest thing was I said this to somebody actually the other day. When my dad died, he left me the greatest thing I could possibly get, and that was his good name. I
Mhm.
can't say that to my children. Look what's happened.
Yeah.
They have to live with that. My grandchildren have to live with that. So, as I say, it's part of life's plans, part of
Yeah.
life's lessons that we have to go through. But
Mhm.
you either walk through it or you die.
Yeah. I believe everything happens for a reason, as crazy it may sound. At the moment, we say, why me? Why me? I don't understand why this is happening to me. And we go through some pretty rough crisis and obstacles along the way.
Right.
But I always feel like once we get through those obstacles and once we overcome the crisis, those things that we went through gave us qualities that we didn't have before. And
Absolutely.
now it's us to choose what to do with those things. Do we get stuck and pity ourselves, or do we use what we've learned
Yeah.
and we go out there and use and put it for the better, into
You,
society?
yeah, Stacey, I think one of the things that is important is that people don't become bitter.
Mhm.
If you don't let things go, you become very, very bitter. And that was something that I was not going to allow myself to do. And it would have been easy to do. I mean, let's face it. I mean,
Yeah,
everybody that's heard my story, you've heard my story, could say, well, this guy could have been really bitter. And
yeah,
yeah, I could have been, but I wasn't going to allow that because it doesn't do any good. And
no,
again, the thing is that I think that when we're hurt and we're betrayed by people that we love, especially, or people that we trust, it's very
yeah,
easy to become bitter and say, well, I don't trust anybody anymore. I don't believe
no,
anybody.
no.
I don't trust anybody. But we
Mhm.
can't do that. We can't. We can't live our lives like that.
Mhm.
And again, I think that it's just really important that we, keep our eye on the future and put one foot in front of the other and have goals. And again, if those goals line up with God's will, man,
Yeah.
you'll have a very, very sweet life. The
Mhm.
adversity is going to come. That's part of life. Somebody's
Yeah.
going to pull out in front of you in the car and somebody's going to flip you off. And it just happened to me again the other day. I don't get mad at people. I don't start screaming at them or,
Yeah.
what I just don't. I mean, those days are way, way behind me because again, I have a lot of patience now where before I didn't have quite as much. I mean, I wasn't as bad as some, but
Yeah.
I still didn't have an awful lot of patience. But today I go with the flow, as they say.
I
Mm.
love it. I love it. Now, tell us about the services and the products that you offer people.
Yeah, the course, the artificial intelligence course is basically not basically is focused on people 55 and above. Although, as I mentioned before, anybody can take it. It's made up of 10 modules, 4 segments each, as I mentioned. But it really just is a very easy primer to get to
Mhm.
know what artificial intelligence is. As we put
Mhm.
more courses together, they're going to be more advanced. They're already being worked on, actually. And if there was, people have said to me, well, what exactly, as I've spoken about this with people, would you say is the most important thing about artificial intelligence that you've learned? And
Yeah.
that is to know how to speak to the computer, how to speak to the AI. It's called
Yeah.
prompts. Having the right prompts, asking it the right questions. That's very,
Yeah.
very important. It's knowing what to ask. Because you can ask any number of questions, but if it's too vague, it's not going to be pinpointing for you. But again, if you ask the right prompt, the right question, you'll get the answers that you need. So, and as I said, I've got people right now, the older folks that are making money. Some are, I've got one that's making invitations. I've got
Mhm.
another one that does children's cards. And I've got another one that actually is helping other businesses with the AI. And you're making about $10,000 a month doing that.
Love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Now, where can people find the course?
Yeah. The website is academy.ganewisdom.com. That's Gane, wisdom.com. And if you'd like to write to me, my email address there is aiacademy@gainwisdom.com. So either one you can, but website itself is academy.gainwisdom.com. And that's where you'll find us. And again, it's a very, very easy primer. In that, we have 260 prompts that we put together as a separate sheet. We have a video that really kind of walks you through how to use the ChatGPT. And
Yeah.
the other one that we have is we put together a ebook with that is the thumbnail that tells the listener kind of encapsulates what those modules were. It follows module to module, and also has a workbook that follows exactly the course. And if you walk away from this course not knowing about artificial intelligence, I say this respectfully, then you haven't tried, because it is so simple that we did that purposely to make it elementary so people would be able to understand it. And I don't care if you're 20 or if you're 95.
Yeah.
This is going to give you that introduction. And again, as we bring out other courses and other modules,
Mhm.
people will. We're going to have seminars and workshops and such as well. So we've got some big plans with this. But everything that I've gotten so far has been very, very positive on it. So I'm pretty excited about it.
I love that. Now, what's your main website that people can find you at?
Yeah, my main website is ganewisdom.com. Very easy, ganewisdom.com, Gane wisdom.com. And there you'll find, I'm also a chaplain. You'll see that on there. And man of many colors, I guess, is kind of the way people have said. But, everything, if you look at my website, and I know you have, Stacey, but everything that I do is aimed at helping other people.
Right.
When people say, well, what do you do? I mean, I'm not driving a taxi. I'm not inventing widgets. It's everything that I have done is to help other people. And
Yes.
I think you'll see that on there. The books that I've written 4 books, as you know, again, is all to empower other people. And I've used a lot of my experiences to help do that. And again, that gives me a fulfillment, knowing that everything that I've been through has been for a purpose, and it makes me feel good.
I love that. I love that. Now, where can people find your books?
They can find them on Amazon, and they're listed on Amazon. Just put my name in, Guy W. Gane Jr., or you can order them from me. I have people that will periodically write to me to send me a book, and they can do that too. So it's up to them.
I love it. Now, here's we give listeners, 5 concrete actions. Can you please share 5 things that they could do this week to be wiser and safer with money?
Wiser and safer with money. Well, first of all, keep a record of what you spend. That's very, very important. I actually have a ledger book, and every dollar that I spend goes into that ledger book. And it takes a little bit of time, yes, but the thing is that how many times people have gone to the store and they go to use their debit card and there's not enough money in there. Nothing feels worse than being embarrassed at a checkout counter. So I would say, keep a good eye on what you have.
Yeah.
Don't buy everything that you want. Just
Yes.
don't. I mean, the thing is that when you impulse buy, it's generally not the best thing to do.
Hmm.
Think about it, especially if it's a major purchase, excuse me. We want to feel good, and we all know people, that old saying back in the 80s, to shop till you drop, or when things get bad. How did that go? When things get bad, I go shopping or whatever.
Yeah.
That's not a good antidote, because that's
Right.
only a temporary high. I bought this dress. Well, I didn't buy the dress, but a
Yeah.
woman
Yeah.
buys a dress. A guy goes in and buys, a fishing pole or something like that.
Yeah.
The thing is that don't impulse buy. The other thing is that save 10%. I used to tell people this all the time. Especially when you're younger. When you get paid, take 10% and pay yourself first. People would say, well, it's only a couple dollars, but boy, I'll tell you, if you're 22 years old and you're putting $25 a paycheck away,
Yeah.
you'd be surprised how I always said that the hardest thing for people to do was to save money. The easy
Yeah.
thing is to make money. I mean, anybody can make money, whether legally or illegally, you can make money. But the
Yeah.
hardest thing is to save it. And I think
Yeah.
that's very, very important, is to have a savings plan, for yourself. The other thing is to have an investment. Put money into something that, apart from your savings account, where you're putting money aside for yourself. Many
Right.
people will do that with a 401k.
Yeah.
Right now in the country, about 80 million people have a 401k. And there's over $1 trillion in 401ks right now. So that would be
Yeah.
another avenue. So I think that just be really, really careful with what you spend and how you spend it and who you spend it on. I think that's really important.
And if you could sum all this up in one sentence, what's one thing you'd like everybody to remember before we go?
Forgive. If you could, if there's any one thing that I would say, forgive. If you held anything against anybody, just forgive them. I know it's not easy. Things worthwhile generally are not easy to do, but
Yes.
if you want to have peace of mind, which at the end of the day is what every human being wants, they want shelter, they want food, and they want peace of mind. And I
Yes.
can't help you with the shelter or the food, but I can give you peace of mind. And again, if you want to be happy, help somebody, do something nice for someone, no matter how insignificant, whether it's a compliment, like you said, or the holidays are coming up. You really want to do something special, go in front of stand kind of at the front of the store and look at that person who's having that struggle paying for you can tell, or you can
Yeah.
let the cashiers know, but you can tell, and then pay for that. If you can afford to do it, boy, imagine that. Imagine somebody has $150 worth of groceries, and instead of putting things back, you go and give them the whole amount of money to pay for that. You
Right.
imagine how you're going to make them feel and their kids feel and their family feel, let alone
Yeah.
how you're going to feel. That's a
Yeah.
thought.
No, it's a good thought. I've heard people do that. I've heard people tell stories, and it goes a long way. It really
It really
does.
does. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Well, this has been great, Guy. I thank you so much for coming on this show. I
Thank
can't
you
wait
for
to,
having me. I
yeah,
really, it's always enjoyable.
oh, same here. Same here. Thank you so much. And this has been a world of wisdom, and you really put light on a lot of different things that people really need to pay attention about. And I thank you for coming on the show today,
Thank
and
you. Thank
I'll be
you.
seeing you soon.
Sounds good. Take care, everybody. God bless.